coming up next on this episode of the Unlock You podcast.
So many managers, I think, especially young managers, tend to see their team as an extension of them. Remember, we started by doing this ourselves, and now we've got these other people, and we have to ask them to do that. In fact, I remember the first management training I was sent to, they defined it and said, management is getting work done through others.
Oh, gosh.
But the idea was it was my work, and I was now going to direct and delegate. And so that was how we were set up to think.
And instead, then people feel it that,
Yeah, they absolutely do. So instead of seeing your team as an extension of you, what we do is we use the same framework of who do we want to become as a team? And let's develop a shared identity.
Welcome to Unlock You with Dr. Shannan Crawford. And you know that I am always on the hunt for the best who can tell us how to lead well from a healthy soul. So I want to introduce you to Ron Minatrea with quite the bio. Ron Minatrea began empowering other leaders during his 30-year career as a Fortune 100 executive. A global operations leader, he was responsible for shipping over 20 billion per year, yet still able to enjoy ball games and school events with a growing family. Today, as a speaker and consultant, he equips leaders and their teams to think exponentially, live fully, and lead for lasting success. Thank you so much for being our guest.
It is quite the pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness. I can't wait to hear more about the exponential mindset that everyone is raving about. And would you unpack that for us?
Yeah, you talk about the shipping 20 billion and worldwide operations and making ball games, and that didn't happen by accident. In fact, I think my career followed a path that most leaders face, and that is we start out in our leadership journey being pretty good at what we do.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, when you're really good at what you do, they'll ask you to do more. And so it means that we wind up growing almost accidentally and incrementally, almost on the job training.
Right.
And so as they give you more to do or ask you to do more, or you reach to do more, you run a little bit harder, you run a little faster. And then you learn to be smarter. So you learn to optimize and you streamline things and you learn to delegate things, but you're still coming at it from the same premise as when you owned the projects or the outcomes yourself. Right. And so your leadership style for most is that they're really leaning into control and directing and doing and delegating tasks, but not necessarily full authority of things. And that will serve you well. But the irony is, the more successful you are at that, the faster the pace will get, the more intense the pressure will be, the stakes will be higher, and it will test you to the limits. There's only so much. I think of a sponge, and I think about squeezing something out. So every time we optimize, we squeeze a little more out to reach to a broader responsibility, but eventually we reach a limit. And what's happening, I think the demands are growing at a much faster rate than our growth as leaders. And the reason is we keep getting incrementally better at doing what we've always done. The answer is to change how we think, to change how we lead. And that really is what the exponential mindset is about. And for me, I discovered that, if you will, when I hit that wall. And in a rotational assignment in my own career, I had relied on what had served me well for quite some time. And in fact, I had nationwide responsibilities, but I was still doing it in that kind of internal, I will get this done, power up my, give it everything I've got. And I hit a wall that just, didn't budge. And I had a hallway conversation with a guy. The way that it was organized, I was responsible for everything to do with quality and customer satisfaction in North America. And yet all the resources that would address those issues were reporting into the divisions, not to me.
Mm-hmm.
It created this situation where I felt like I was responsible for everything, but I had the ability to control absolutely nothing.
Oh my gosh, that right there. I think that resonates with so many people.
And when that happens,
Yes.
I began to question myself. Because I'd always been able to make it work before. I'd always kind of run through the wall, but this time I hit the wall and just it didn't budge. And what I realized, I'm kind of questioning myself, and I'm going like, have I been promoted beyond my ability? They're going to find out I really don't belong here,
Yes.
And so I was worried about that. I'm walking down the hall one day, and one of my senior leaders, somebody that I had reported to in the past, he says, "Hey, how's it going?" And he didn't really want to know. It was a
Pleasantry.
rhetorical question, really. But I hesitated because it wasn't going well.
Mm-hmm.
And to his credit, he's like, "Whoa, wait, what is it?" And I said, "Oh, I feel like I'm responsible for everything, but I have the ability to control nothing."
Yeah.
And he says, "Well, that's easy."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "That didn't seem easy to me." But I leaned in because he said, I said, what makes it easy? And he says, "Here's what you have to understand. People will follow you for who you are
Mm-hmm.
and how you treat them.
Yeah.
Regardless of your title or your position or any lines on an org chart. That's not what they're following." I knew he was right.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that then, kind of put me on this path to go, what's the secret to people following you for who you are? And that meant, really doing some soul searching and digging down to understand. I quite frankly realized I was believing a lot of things that were limiting beliefs, that I was relying on things that had served me well, but they wouldn't, they just couldn't make that next step. One of those was, I felt like I realized without knowing it, I had relied on those lines on an org chart to give me the authority, or to think that I was able to direct people, or that's why they would follow me. And so even though, I wasn't a bad guy, I wasn't, trying to do things that weren't good, in my mind, there was this belief back there that wasn't true. And so I had to undo that. I had to change that. And that really that's the impetus of the exponential mindset, is to realize, the belief I had was I have to have control in order to have an impact or to be responsible.
Wow.
What I was able to tell myself differently is I can influence even what I can't control.
Wow.
And that means that what we're really trying to do in leadership is make our first step one of influence. That doesn't mean you don't need to be in control of things, or you may have to direct people, or, do things at a more, directing level, but make the first step one of influence. And if you can make that shift, then if you think about it, control is limited to what I can get my arms around, and it takes energy, and it's draining the life out of me. On the other hand, influence is about what I can envision and equip and empower in others. And that removes that limitation. It really opens up. I think that, what I can control is limited by my own capacity. But I think what I can influence is limited only by my imagination. What can I envision? Because when I can move to that, then boy, the impact really rises. So that's the first shift in this exponential mindset.
Yeah. And so I'd love to interject here that helplessness and hopelessness are the ingredients for depression. And how many people in a large structure are feeling very depressed because they have a vision, a capacity for something, but they don't have the ability or the authority to operate on that. And so it's creating a double bind that we don't do very well cognitively or psychologically. And so I just want to speak to those who might be feeling just low energy. It's hard to wake up in the morning. It's hard to want to go to work or have vision or passion. And you're like, where did that go? Partly, it might be situational depression. It doesn't mean that you have biological genetic depression, but you may have situational. And so the keys he's about to give us on how to unlock that mindset are huge, because it's not just affecting our work performance, but also our energy, our sense of competence, feeling capable, and the version of us that comes home to our families of how engaged and on we are versus lethargic, kind of wrapped up in ourselves and just want to zone out in front of TV or social media or something. So I love this. And I just want to underscore everything he is saying is so practical for where so many of us are, especially since 2020. There's been huge shifts. Yes. Life has been moving much faster than the organization and the soul has been ready for. And yet we're demanded to be at that pace, irrespective of any onboarding for a national pandemic or international pandemic. So thank you for just jumping in and giving us these keys to help us get out of limiting beliefs and double binds like helplessness and hopelessness. And if anyone's listening and you're feeling that, please lean in and be open to counseling, coaching, different things to help you strategically invest in yourself so you don't get stuck in dynamics of depression, anxiety that steal the joy of why you're in your position. So keep going. I'm loving this.
Yeah, the question you get to is, how can you create the influence? And you go back to what he said, people follow you for who you are and how you treat them. But then that opens the question of, who am I? And it really gets you to examining that. And for me, it brought about another shift, if you will, that I think is central to this new mindset. And that is, I realized that most people are using what I call do-centered leadership. The first question they ask is, what do you want to do? You know, you set your goals by trying to understand, what do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? Right. Rather, what if we ask, who do you want to become? So the first step in the exponential mindset is not to ask, what do I want to do, but who do I want to become? Yeah. And when I understand who I want to become, that will inform what I want to do or what I need to do. And that will give direction and purpose to my goals that, quite frankly, I think this is a key area of struggle, particularly within middle leaders, we call them in an organization, because they don't set their goals, they inherit their goals. Someone says you got to cut costs by 10%, you got to grow sales by 20%, whatever those numbers are, someone is saying this is what you have to go do. We have to put that in context to who we want to become, or that though hitting those numbers will struggle to find purpose in that. Is that making sense to, I'm not sure I'm saying it correctly, but I think that's where we really, really struggle to find that connection.
I would love for us to get into the weeds. Let's go through some case illustrations. How do we implement the exponential mindset? Let's say this is someone in middle management. They don't have a ton of authority, but they are being asked to do a ton of actionables. What should they do? How do they walk this out?
So first question is, who do I want to become? And so we talk about three kinds of goals. There's a goal to do something. That's kind of effort-based. I have a goal to walk 3 miles 5 days a week, right? That's just go do it, Ron. The next kind of goal is a goal to achieve something. So go back to, I need to increase sales by 20% this year. Well, I can't just do that. That's a results-based goal. And so when I can determine how many sales calls I'm going to make. That's the do. But
Mhm.
I can't necessarily make that happen. And something, a unique dynamic occurs when we move to a results-based goal.
Mm.
I give up or share control. So I can make more sales calls, but someone saying yes means that we now share the outcome, and it may take multiple actions to bring that about. So those are a little more difficult,
Mhm.
but they're also more rewarding. And so
Yeah.
that really is the secret to execution in business, right? We want to line up a great cause and effect relationship between the things that we can do, that we can control,
Yeah.
that will produce that outcome. And
Mhm.
boy, there's just so much on that about how to execute. But I said there's three kinds of goals. The
Mm.
first one is to do, the second one is to achieve, but the third kind of goal is to become someone or something. And
Mm.
that really is that's what's going to tell us, you know, if you go back to the correlation, what we want to achieve is going to give direction to what we need to do.
Yeah.
But understanding who we want to become is going to give direction to what we want to achieve. And that really is the order that we want to seek. Who do I want to become?
Mhm.
And we look at that in in seven areas, but broadly we'll say them in two. One of them is the what would I have to believe? How would I have to behave? What
Mhm.
competencies would I need? What passions would need to stir me? So those are character,
Yeah.
those are rooted in who I am. And then we also ask, well, what kind of education would I need? And, what experience and what accomplishments would I need? So when we pose the question, how do you become a successful or whoever it is you want to become? You want to look at it on both the character side,
Mhm.
beliefs, behaviors, values, competencies, and passions, but also then what would I want to do? And the key here is put the who first.
Mhm.
Understand that. And we had a session yesterday when someone asked the question, how can I be this in my work? If I'm really good at that, I can't
Mhm.
be this at home.
Mm.
And we're like, wait. The character of who you want to become probably going to be the same. And in
Yeah.
fact, if it's not,
Translate.
think of the incongruent inside
Mhm.
us, right? And what
Sure.
that does when we are one person in one environment and another person in another environment, one of them is not right. One
Mhm.
of them is not us, right? And so getting that aligned, and that's
Yeah.
really the step, right? Understand who you want to become, align the beliefs and behaviors in such a way that they produce the actions.
Yeah.
And and then when you move from the work environment to the home environment, you're the same person. The expressions of how you apply that may be different in a business environment versus a parenting environment.
Mhm.
And for us, the idea is to set up one plan, not two. One of the things that we see is that um, when people set goals in a business environment, they're very structured. You have
Mhm.
goals, you have reviews, you have accountability. The structure is there with a rhythm to say, this is what you have to do. These are the deadlines. These are the expectations. When we set goals on a personal level, we tend to go, well, I'd like to become this, or maybe I'd like to do that.
Yeah. That
Often lacking is that rhythm, that
mm.
discipline, that
Mm.
accountability, that structure. And so which one wins? Right? So we're going to respond in that work environment to that. So if we have two separate plans, we're probably going to pay a lot of attention to one
Yeah.
and maybe not the other.
Mhm.
So for us, we suggest that you create one plan where the professional is a part of that plan.
Mm.
And then get your board of directors around you. Get those people who will be accountable and speak into your life. Review it regularly. Set up a regular rhythm of review
Mm.
where you are looking at your life's goals, the become of who you want to be, um, we help people understand that with a simple exercise. So I don't know who you want to become, but let's assume that for just a minute we said congratulations. After a lifetime of service, you've been selected to the Hall of Fame.
Mm.
What is the name of that Hall of Fame? And if you can begin to think about, well, and who else is in there? And what is it about them that got them there? What were the traits that you admired in them? And what we're doing is really helping you begin to envision, how do I want to be known?
Mm-hmm.
What am I giving myself to?
Yeah.
And then we take them through asking, so what would need to be true of me in my character, my beliefs, my behaviors, my values? What would need to be true of me in my competencies? What would need to be true of me then, even in the experience and execution side? So if we can help people understand who they are using that framework and who they are becoming, we create a single integrated person. And that means I can be the same person everywhere. And the funny thing about that is it tends to break down walls and barriers where people now begin to trust me, because I don't have an agenda. I don't have this disconnect that's going on inside. I'm suddenly more approachable and able to be, actually, when I'm secure in who I am, comfortable in my own identity, I'm able to see yours. I'm able to see what you need. I'm able to walk into a room in the office, and instead of asking for the room to validate me, I'm comfortable with who I am. I'm now able to look at you and see what your need is.
That's good.
And you don't sense an agenda from me. You don't, you're willing to follow. So that's part of that, they'll follow you for who you are.
Yeah.
And if we have time, the one other thing I would share is that the second part of that was, and how you treat them.
Oh, yeah.
And this really is a big shift, because so many managers, I think, especially young managers, tend to see their team as an extension of them. Remember, we started by doing this ourselves, and now we've got these other people, and we have to ask them to do that. In fact, I remember the first management training I was sent to, they defined it and said, management is getting work done through others.
Oh, gosh.
But the idea was it was my work, and I was now going to direct and delegate. And so that was how we were set up to think.
And then people feel it that.
Yeah, they absolutely do. So instead of seeing your team as an extension of you, what we do is we use the same framework of who do we want to become as a team. And let's develop a shared identity.
Love that.
And now when we have a shared identity, all the outcomes are not my outcomes, they're our outcomes. And now my job isn't to do and direct and delegate. Rather, my job is to envision, equip, and empower. I'm helping you, all of you on the team, bring your best. Now I begin to see diverse contributions, not as competing or conflicting, but rather complementary. Each one of us. I read a book one time that says, we're not all the head or the eye or the foot. It's so much the same. When a team comes together, everyone has a role to play. And as they play that role, they're bringing the best of who they are. They're expressing that part of them that makes them come alive. And as the leader, what I'm trying to do is ignite that, give them that platform, give them that opportunity, knock down the roadblocks. And that's a very different way of leading than directing and delegating and doing.
I love this. So if we just kind of recap this whole summary of, we have people are being asked to perform at a level that maybe they don't have the authority for, that may be producing stagnation in the career. It could produce situational depression, anxiety, just feeling like a chronic failure. And it makes it really hard to show up with our best self at home and at work. And so I love the keys you're giving us with the exponential mindset. And I believe you guys do coaching, and that's something that's a service you offer. And then Crawford Clinics provides therapy if anybody ever wants that. So we would love to come alongside of you to help remove those obstacles, because in the workplace, we've been told, do the execute the task, and then get people around you to do the work for you. And your job is to delegate. And that's very meaningless and purposeless. But I love how you're saying, once you step in and embody the character of who you want to be, who you know you can be, and now you live securely, now you can activate your team. And those people start living from their true identity, and you're getting their contribution versus that pyramid view of, I am the one that tells everyone else what to do. Absolutely. And I'm losing out on so much lateral growth of where these contributions and voices and input are completely different, and they may have some of our blind spots they may be able to capture and have insight and intel for us. So I love this. Thank you so much, Ron Minatrea. We're going to have you back. For the sake of time, we're going to wrap here, but thank you so much. And how can people connect with Exponential Mindset?
Just ronminatrea.com.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, and we can't wait to have you back. Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody, and we'll see you for the next episode.